You're tuning in to the Weirdest Web Podcast. What time is it?
The Weirdest Web.
It's time.
So weird.
Happy Sunday, everyone. This is your host, Caitlin Moorer-Waltzer, and you're tuning into a very special first episode of The Weirdest Web, a podcast dedicated to unearthing hidden gems of artistic talent, offering a platform of exposure for artists of all kinds to talk about and showcase their work. A special thanks is going out today to my mom. I just moved across the country from Seattle after living there for 5 years, and I drove across to New Hampshire. And I'm staying with her till April, so I will be using her basement. She's very graciously let me stay, and also we'll be recording out of the basement, which is great because it's pretty quiet down here. And so if you guys could just bear with me while I stumble through some some first-time podcaster mistakes, I would appreciate it. I'm going to try not to start my podcast over and over again. And if you hear creaking coming through in the podcast, that is my mother walking around upstairs. Starting next Sunday, we will be inviting special guest artists onto the show, and our first guest will be Amy Baker. She's a visual artist, a priestess, a poetess, and a paleo baker who serves her goods with a touch of enchantment. So stay tuned for Sunday, February 5th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when we will be interviewing Miss Baker. In the subsequent Sundays, we'll have some pretty amazing, inspiring, upcoming guests, so I hope you guys will tune in with me for that. Today, it's just me, your weird sister and artist and host, and I'm an artist myself, a singer-songwriter, a dancer, writer, visual artist, aspiring actress, and fledgling podcaster and YouTuber, and a high priestess, and a cross-country traveler as of a few weeks ago. And today on the Weirdest Web, we're going to do a quick card reading to get the feel of the global energy. We'll be doing that every week. And following that, we will be doing our Ask a Priestess Corner, where we will give a message or channeled message or answer to questions of all kinds. Not necessarily channeled, but some of them will be, as you know, if you're at all involved in the magical world. If you'd like to submit a question, you can email me at catwsb@yahoo.com. That's catwsb as in boy @yahoo.com. And if you'd like to be considered as a guest on the Weirdest Web, please email me at the same address. You can put question in the subject title to submit a question, and you can put interview in the subject to request an interview or be a guest on the show. And if you'd like a personal reading, just type reading in the subject line so I know who I'm talking to and nothing goes to spam. So let's get into today's global energy check-in. Today we're using oracle decks by some of my favorite oracle creators. We have the Witch's Wisdom Oracle by Barbara Michael John Free and Flavia Kate Peters, illustrated by Richard Crooks. And we have the Divine Circus Oracle by Alana Fairchild, and we also have the Fairy Forest Oracle by Lucy Cavendish. So let's just dive in and get a quick global reading. We are currently in the waxing gibbous phase of the moon. We are in the sign of Aquarius with the waxing gibbous phase of the moon, and the moon is about 59% full today. In the sign of Aquarius, it's a really good time for, Aquarians are very futuristic, they're very forward-thinking, and now is a really good time for acts of revolution, radical transformation, both on a personal and interpersonal level, as well as a planetary and global level. So expect the energy to be a little bit revolutionary, but we'll see when we check in with the cards. It's also a time for ripping down limiting beliefs and tending to seemingly impossible dreams with the idea that they are in fact possible. So on the global reading we have today, all right, just shuffling, you guys, give me a second. I've been reading cards for about 20 years, and I love it. It's one of the things that helps me feel super connected to spirit and source energy. It's also one of the ways I help my friends when they need an answer to something. They'll ask me, and that always feels good, and it always feels good to help and give some sort of, comfort zone and respite for people. Whether or not you believe in the cards, that's up to you. But I know that I've seen some great things. Okay, so we pulled the tarot cards, the Unseelie Queen, Confetti, Healer, the Prophecy Guidance card, Circus of Love. Interesting. Okay, so the cards here, what I'm seeing is sort of a past indulgence of not listening to guidance, not listening to intuition. This is kind of on a global scale. As a collective conscious, okay, like we have been sort of following the glittery path of fun, indulgence, not everyone, but as a global whole. There are people that have been more tapped into not doing that. And those are the leaders of right now, okay, like stepping into the new era of humanity. There is a huge global shift happening right now. I don't need to go too far into it. It's all over YouTube. It's all over everything. There are some strange opinions about what's going on. There are some more observable opinions about what's going on. I'm not getting too into that. This is not a political channel. This is only meant to be an artistic platform of expression, okay? So today we have this reading. What it's telling us is that people were much more likely to follow what's shiny, pretty, and ultimately deceptive in the past for the sake of fun, enjoyment, and pleasure. Right now, what we're on is a path of healing and people listening into their intuition and allowing love to be the order of the day, which is as it should be at all times, okay? Everybody has, whether you're identify as a witch or a priestess or a magician or a Christian or a Buddhist or whether you're Islamic or Hindu, it doesn't matter. Everybody has a piece of themselves that is direct communication to divine source energy, and we use that that is a direct message. That's our intuition. Our intuition is the divine piece of us that's connected directly to source energy, giving us guidance. And a lot of the times that guidance can feel like it's against the normal flow or the flow of the masses. And depending on how strong your ties are to your beliefs around where you fit into your social scene or family scene, however that looks, sometimes we go against that guidance. And, I don't know about you guys, but whenever I've gone against my own guidance, it bites me in the butt. So, directly in the butt. So, I'm seeing here that right now the current energy of the globe is shifting towards healing, listening for direction, listening for guidance, and becoming more led by love and less led by greed and false prophets and false images of, pleasure and such. In the future, and by future, I don't at all pretend to read the future. That's impossible. There's so many different potential outcomes in every moment. But in terms of this reading, the future, quote unquote, just kind of means the immediate upcoming patterns that are going to be presenting themselves due to this shift, which is transformation, healing, and sort of an incubation period where we are going to be reevaluating as a global society, reevaluating what we look like, what our laws look like, how do we treat each other, how do we treat animals, how do we treat the planet, where can we fix that, where can we upgrade, where can we stop being destructive to ourselves. There's a magical phrase, as within, so without, as above, so below. What that means is, as I do to myself, so I do to you. As I do to the earth, so I do to myself. As I do to you, so I do to myself. As I do to the cats, so do I do to myself. As I do to a tree or any other living being, so I do to myself. It means that we are all directly connected on a web, the Wyrdest web, which is what this podcast is named for. The weirding web, meaning the web of creation, the web of destiny, the web of fate, all woven together, and each of us hold a strand on that web. Specifically the artists, we create Artists create. We are creators. We're not even manifestors. We create. And every time we create something that shakes the world, things change. And the world is, in fact, governed by the artists. This is, we invent. The artists, the inventors, we're the ones that make up the world. So everybody has a piece of that in them someplace, right? So this is talking about an incubation period, and we'll just get a final little card here. Oof. All right. So I pulled the sacrifice card, and right after that, the soulkin card. Okay, so this is talking about where do we need to let go in order to grow? Where do we need to let go in order to grow? Where do we need to give up something that we've been holding on to for so long that's actually weighing us down? And this is the perfect time in this waxing gibbous moon of Aquarius to look at where we can tear down those limiting beliefs, what's holding us back, what's keeping us from moving forward with the things we really want to bring to the world. Every human being on this planet is a creator of some kind. Some of us have forgotten that. Some of us have just forgotten what that means. Sometimes we get pushed into a job or a lifestyle or a career or whatever that sort of flattens out the real spirit-driven piece of us and forces us into a box when we're actually an intergalactic octagon, right? That's every human being. So it's time to take a look at what really is driving your motivations. It's really driving us as a species. What's really driving us in our work life? How do we change that? How do we get closer to our more authentic self? And how do we form a life? How do we move forward and form a life that looks like something we want it to look, that we deliberately create, that's not just falling into the beehive and buzzing around aimlessly and sadly with sadness in our hearts, right? And then soulkin, that's how you find the people that you're meant to be with, right? You find the people you're meant to be with by shining as authentically as possible and doing what you are designed to do by spirit, and then you draw in the people that you are meant to draw in. So that is what I will say about that. Now, that being said, I'm going to pull one more card just because I'm kind of curious about... Yeah. All right, so this, I don't know if this is going to happen or not, guys, but according to the cards, we are looking at sort of springtime for a kind of a bigger, more obvious shift that's going to be happening sort of in a collective way. So that is our energetic global reading for the day. For our next piece of the Wyrdest Web podcast, we're going into our Ask a Priestess corner. This is where you can ask a question and just have, I will be answering some of them. And when we have guests on, a lot of the people that I'm going to be interviewing are also magically trained and work their art from that place as well. You don't have to be, by the way, to be on my show, but that is sort of the aim of it. But they will be able to also co-answer. So today's question comes from a very, very talented and very dear friend of mine, Carl Erickson, whom I'm hoping to have on as a future guest. He's just an incredible painter, and he's just a very magical, beautiful, glittery ball of light. So I'm very excited I know he'll be on at some point in March. So I'm excited for you guys to hear that. But he did send me my first question, and what he asks, Carl asks, when a shadow aspect of yourself reveals itself to you, how do you show it? How do you love it in a way to honor it and let it be released? Oof. All right. I love this question that Carl sent in for a few reasons. Before I answer it, however, I do want to just say that, for the sake of any legal issues, this is for entertainment purposes only. I am not in any way, shape, or form a licensed therapist, counselor, or psychologist. However, I have had a lot of roles in my work life where I've been sort of trained in areas of psychology, or been in a psychological setting or a social work or clinical setting, and I've had a lot of trainings around that. I've had jobs where I've had caseloads of clients that I've had to assist in a psychological aspect, so we did get a lot of training there. And I've been working with at-risk youth and at-risk adults since I was quite young, and I myself would classify myself as an at-risk adult and youth for some time. I did go through my own therapeutic, I went through therapy myself and had my own struggles there. So I've had some experiential training. I've also been trained as a high priestess, and part of that work is always psychological and doing deep work on yourself, and the shadow aspects of yourself. So that being said, I will go ahead and answer Carl's question. And one more thing, if you are experiencing any sort of mental health issues that are really putting you into a crisis state, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health and Suicide Hotline in the USS can be reached by dialing 988. So, first of all, I love this question because Carl is saying already, he already knows that to work on your shadow self means to bring love to it and to hold space for that part of you and allow it to be released. So there's that. And again, the question is, when a shadow aspect of yourself reveals itself to you, how do you show it love in a way to honor it and be released, allow it to be released? Okay. So first of all, we have to understand what shadow work is. So for those of you who don't necessarily understand that context, the phrase shadow work or shadow in the aspects of psychology comes from a 20th century innovative psychologist, Carl Jung. And he brought a lot of newness to the world of psychology, post-Freudian psychology. And I have my feelings about Freud, but this isn't a political show, so I'll keep my feelings to myself about this. I might open up about that later. But I do enjoy Jung quite a lot. You typically get, in the world of psychology, you get people that are pro-Jung and people that are pro-Freud. It's very rarely both, to my knowledge. So shadow work, specifically defined by Jungian psychology, is the type of psychotherapy that focuses on the shadow self, or parts of the psyche that we keep hidden, often to the point where these shadow aspects perpetuate patterns in our lives that are repetitive and destructive until we both address and heal these issues. And for some people, the awareness of shadow pieces is often so terrifying or disorienting or dysregulating that they'll just shut down and they never even make it to the awareness piece, right? So sometimes getting to that awareness piece is, always the first step. We have to first become aware that there's an issue, right? If we have a repeating issue that's happening, we have to first become aware of that issue. Then we have to have the cojones, the ball sack, the ovaries to address it. Like, some people will just stop there and be like, well, I just am what I am. This is who I am. This is part of my personality. And really, no, it's not. Your personality is defined by you. So if you have something that's causing a destructive pattern in your life, your ability to take charge of it, look at it, process it, and begin to heal is up to you. It's not permanently stuck there, but you have to become aware of what it is that you're what you're engaging in that's creating that shadow aspect or perpetuating that shadow aspect. And sometimes people, at least in my experience, there are definitely people who can't hear their shadow. Like, even if you're trying to reflect back to you, that's often family members. If you're trying to reflect back to them, this action that you repeatedly do is upsetting to me, they'll immediately turn it around on you, or they will totally absolve themselves of any responsibility. Well, you did this, so therefore, like, this is justified. And it becomes a huge circle, and that's often seen in narcissistic structured families. But it also, again, I'm not a psychologist. This is just what I know to be true. But, there's been a lot of changes in the access people have to psychological healing, right? So when we're talking about, like, in the world of COVID and post-COVID, right, we brought even further innovations to psychology where people can now just have a therapist online. So why I'm saying that is I'm encouraging anybody, if you're really struggling, there are ways to do shadow work by yourself, and I will throw some of those out as we're going along here. But if you are really struggling with something, get professional. Get a therapist. It is one of the most amazing, beneficial things. I personally think everybody should have a therapist. Absolutely everyone should have a therapist. And everyone should have a sounding board. And it can't really be your friend. It can't really be your lover. It can't be your parents. It can't be anything like that, because those people already have a biased view and a filtered view of what they're looking at, right? So you want somebody who's objective, who doesn't know you, doesn't really know your history, and can just basically look at things and tell you what's going on. So shadow work, once you become, like, you get through the acceptance phase, like, okay, this thing is happening, and I probably should do something to address this pattern, etc., behavior. It's basically an explorative journey to the deepest parts of yourself, and it is not for the faint of heart. It is not for the faint of heart. I will say that. I know that in my own life, it's been essential to healing a lot of past trauma, but also, you need to understand that the very nature of shadow work means that you need to cultivate a sense of self-love and a self-love practice. So Carl Erickson, our question asker, not Carl Jung, is asking how to hold space for those pieces when they come up. And there are a number of different ways that you can do that, and it is very individuated, right? But the first thing that you'll find probably in any text about this, and in any online article, and also just like a very practical thing, is just to give yourself grace, okay? Perfection is this weird thing that we hold ourselves to. It has nothing to do with reality. So you really just need to hold space for yourself, be gentle, and understand that this is a process, all right? To bring light to a shadow, right? To do shadow work means you're bringing light to the shadow. You're illuminating the shadow. You're not immediately healing the shadow, because the healing comes from doing the work, and that can be a years-long process. It can take years, but the awareness is first, okay? So that's part of it. And then also understanding that as you go along, the words shadow work and self-love, there's a lot of that's been kind of co-opted from the world of psychology into the world of spirituality. And sometimes people know what they're talking about, and I'm sure, as some of you have been involved in spiritual groups, sometimes people really don't know what they're talking about, and they're just using buzzwords to start a conversation, or to show that they know something, or to start, that kind of stuff. But really, the deeper definition of self-love and the practical application of shadow work are intertwined. So as you do your shadow work, you will start to understand what it is you need to feel safe, to feel fulfilled, all those things. It takes a while. And through that process, you start to cultivate these practices that are very individuated about what self-love means to you. How do you give yourself grace? How do you hold yourself in a sacred space without judging what you're feeling? How do you hold yourself when you've been triggered? How do you hold yourself when you feel wounded, or like something comes up and you're stabbed through the heart? I had something like that happen to me earlier today, and I had to process it in order to get myself in a space to do this podcast. And that's just how it works. We're people, we're organic, moving matter, and we're never still. Things are organic, they process, they unfold, and the triggers sometimes are never deactivated, but you can come to a space where they no longer control any part of your life. And that is the point of shadow work. It's to bring illumination to the wound. And that wound doesn't necessarily heal with the illumination. It just allows you to clearly see what the wound is, so that you can accept it, have clarity around it, and start to deconstruct the unconscious patterns that were created by that wound. So it doesn't take the pain away. Illumination and shadow work doesn't necessarily take the pain away. Sometimes it does. It depends on the thing. But it does allow you to take the control out of that pattern. So, sometimes we have these compulsive things we do, and we can't figure out why the hell we do these things, right? Like, why do I do this every day? Why do I do this at this time every day? Why do I keep blowing up in my relationships? Why do I keep overeating, over drinking, overindulging, over whatever? Why do I never move forward with my projects, my creative ideas? Those unconscious patterns can sort of puppeteer you for a little bit of time, until you decide and you see what is causing that at the root. And the way that you get there is shadow work. Okay. Then you can start the true healing process. That is where the healing process starts. The illumination comes first, then you start the healing process. So how do you show yourself love? You stop giving credence to the wound as a controller in your life, and you start shifting the dynamic away from outward controls in realizing that you are the source of yourself. So, and for a deeper look at shadow work, I recommend YouTube, actually, if you can't afford a therapist, and a lot of people can't right now because for whatever reason, it's just chaos out there economically for many reasons, not whatever reason. And there's a number of YouTube sources. One of my favorites, when I was first introducing myself to the process of shadow work, I actually looked up Teal Swan on YouTube. I love her stuff. She's incredible. Her specifically type it. She has like thousands of videos. So when you type it in, specifically type in Teal Swan shadow work, and a number of videos will come up. She's got a very, very useful and original process around how to unravel those types of things. Okay. So, Carl, I hope that was super helpful for you, and I hope that answered some of your questions. This is just a short podcast, you guys, today. This is just a brand new podcast. In the future, the podcasts are going to be probably more like an hour and a half long. We're going to be having guests on with interviews and such, but today was just me. And thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate people listening. So again, if you're an artist of any kind, it doesn't matter what kind, you could be a dancer, you could be a singer, you could be a writer, you could be a perfume maker, a candle maker, a script writer, somebody that does stuff with cloth, like a designer or a fashion designer or anything like that. A spiritual healer, anybody with any artistic ilk. If you are interested in being considered for an interview and being a guest on my show, that email is catwsb@yahoo.com. And you're just going to put weird interview in the title. So that's WYRD as in the web of weird. Weird interview in the subject line. If you are wanting to submit a question for Ask a Priestess, then go ahead and put in the line Ask a Priestess. And if you want to be, if you're requesting a private reading, by all means, you can do that as well. I've been giving private readings for 20 years or so. You can type reading in the subject line. If you'd like to donate to the channel, you can cash at me at The Universe in a Bottle, all one word. You can tune into my new YouTube channel, also at The Universe in a Bottle. I might be changing that to the Wyrdest web as well, but we'll see how quickly I can get this podcast up. And my Etsy shop for cool handmade magical items and witchy stuff is the Wild Spiral Studios. Just Wild Spiral Studios on Etsy. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week when we're interviewing Amy Baker at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I will post some notifications if I can on my YouTube page. So if anything changes or if there's anything weird, then I will let you guys know. Weird, WYRD. And that is all. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate you tuning in. Take care.